All right. All right. Good evening and welcome to the City of Sunbury Finance Committee meeting. It's July 19th, 2023, and it's 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Mr. Capel.
Here.
Mr. Gose, absent. Mr. Neff.
Here.
Mr. Grumney.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Mr. Martin. Also absent. 5 in attendance. We have a quorum.
All right, great. Thank you. We did have a meeting on June 21st, 2023, and I have a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Cooper. Second by Councilman Grumney. Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Grumney.
Yes.
Mr. Neff.
Steve.
Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
4 ayes. Motion approved.
We're on to new business, the Sunbury recodification. Mr. Hennessy, would you like me to cover this or would you like to cover this?
Well, I've got a couple of notes I'll do, and then you can add to that if you'd like. All right. So this begins on page 3. So what is a recodification? It's been since 1989 that the city has gone through a recodification process, and it was recommended by our codification partner, American Legal Publishing, that we do it now, given the fact that we are also a new city. So a codification or the codified ordinances of the city are where the city's permanent ordinances are maintained and available for the public to view online. A lot of the ordinances that you approve don't show up in the codified book. The ones that are likely to be there are like land use, traffic laws, business regulations. Those ordinances or laws of the city that are permanent. So, which can be changed from time to time, of course. And when they get changed, obviously that's a time when we would update at least that section of the code. But this is meant to be a comprehensive review of the entire city code, checking it against updated state ordinances that have been approved recently that may have not been captured in our ordinances or where we might be in conflict with the state laws. The same could be said of maybe some federal laws as well. So anywhere that the codifier finds that there's an inconsistency, they'll note that for us. They won't make a change. We'll be back in front of council to make those changes with you directly. So they are proposing to, in addition to drafting an editorial and legal report that we'll get back in front of council, they'll also provide model ordinances for the city to help us with any gaps that might be in the ordinance in our existing book, or with anything that we need to update. So there will be some model ordinances. We can choose to use them or not use them. They'll also be adding or improving upon tables of special ordinances. So sometimes in the front of the book, you'll have a list of when there have been annexations to the city or zoning map changes, things that tend to change significantly the footprint of the city. Those types of things might be in a table of special ordinances. So they'll be providing that for us as well. They are proposing, so this is on page 15. They're proposing a cost of $16,200 to basically do the base codification update. And then they list a series of other costs that may or may not apply. So, for example, there could be a variable cost as they start to go through the book. If there's a certain number of pages, if it exceeds the number of estimated pages that they had originally proposed, I mean, there could be a page increase or what have you. The one item in here that maybe I do think will probably apply is on the next page. So back at page 16, it's item number E, the initial rebuilding of the code of ordinances on the city's website. So I think I'd add that $1,000 to the $16,200 as being kind of the base cost associated with this update. Then there are some ongoing costs that occur year in and year out, but we're already paying those now. So, so we have this on the council agenda for action later this evening. Just wanted to make sure we went over what this project is in a little bit more detail before we put it in front of you for a vote. So I don't know, Mayor, if you want to add anything to that.
Did have, I think 2 follow-ups, but, this did come at the recommendation of Mr. Bream, Law Director. I'll start with the question. The first question is the online version or the digital version. That will be something that we'd be able to look at on a web page and run a query for a set of words or something like that. Whereas some of our code is more or less scanned as a PDF and in static form and difficult to query and cross-reference. Okay. And then the only thing I need clarification on is on page 5, it's paragraph 3, sentence 2. I think this could be interpreted a couple different ways, and I'm hoping it's in the first. The review will uncover inconsistencies between sections in the code. I won't read the second part here, but the way I interpret that is if we have something like, let's say, fences and general development standards, and then we also have something in fences in like planned residential district, and they're conflicting, this would identify that. And that's what I think is the greatest value here is for years, we've gone back and forth with developers about, I mean, the code is pretty cumbersome, but when we get into conflict areas, it contradicts itself. So this would help clear that.
Yeah, and which raises a good point. A lot of times, if you go and look at the city's list of codified ordinances now, you would not find the land use or the zoning ordinance on that page. So that may be one other decision we'll need to make as well. That probably just want to confirm that that's included in the base price. If it's not, we'll be back in front of you to talk a little bit more about that. It's not uncommon for cities to not have their zoning ordinance in their codified ordinances because of the page count and the financial impact associated with that. But you're right, Mayor. I mean, there's a great example of where it could be in a section that's in the book, and there's something else referenced in the zoning ordinance. And for a resident, they might not even understand that there's this inconsistency. So, yeah, we'll definitely clarify that point.
Okay, thank you. Is that something Mr. Bream can, you think, do on the fly this evening?
I'll ask him if he knows
Okay.
the answer to that question, and so he can, when we vote, he can, or if we vote, we don't have to vote. He can address that.
No other questions? Any questions from the committee? Sound investment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've used the codified ordinances once or twice before, so
Yeah.
making it a little more user friendly is a good investment. Makes sense.
I agree.
Would you say 2003? Since
1989.
1980.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm very tired.
you were 4.
Is there a recommended,
Is there a recommended time to keep redoing this? Like 89, so 83, whatever it was. 89. Awful. long
89.
Time. They're like a 5 year.
But they're saying 10 to 15 years. Every 10 to 15 years, you should update your ordinances, your ordinance book.
We'll have to.
We are.
And we just to make sure everybody knows, Daryl mentioned this, some of the annual incurred costs that we do have a more or less a cross reference against state law that has rolled out and to make sure we aren't in conflict, like speeding or cell phone policy or something like that. That's something we have been doing, but a total review looking for conflict, we have not.
Correct. Yep.
All right. So I believe we are ready to move on to monthly variance reports. Ms. Stephens.
Thank you, Mayor. I have bank to book reconciliation on the front page of the Finance Committee agenda. As of June 30th, we ended with a total bank balance of $18,269,111.79. Outstanding checks totaled about $25,000, and there's a slight variance to the bank and book, which I have identified. I also have listed the year-to-date income tax collections by category, as you're probably used to seeing by now, since I've had this in the packet for the past several months. This is year-to-date through June, and I added the percentage change in total from year to year, year-to-date. And as you can see, we currently are sitting at a 19.4% increase over our 2022 year-to-date through June collections last year. So I thought that was quite a significant increase, and thought you'd all like to see that. I have monthly variance reports beginning on page 18 of the packet. Starting with the revenue report. Just a couple things I want to highlight through here. As you know, this is year to date through June. So we're halfway through the year, which is it's a great point to stop and reflect and look at where we are versus what we've budgeted. One of the things I want to point out is the third item down there is the income tax, which I've already touched on. We budgeted 3.9 million. We're currently at 2.4 million, which is 62% of collections. I'm going to estimate that we're going to collect about 4.8 million this year based on these collections, which is significantly higher than what we've budgeted, which will bring me to another spreadsheet that I have to present if there's time, which is the adjustments to the revenue and the expenses for the year. Also, if you look down further on this first page in the building permits, we've budgeted $375,000, but we've only collected just over 73,000 for the year. I believe this budgeted figure was very high, and I don't expect that we're going to reach that. Primarily, that was due to when the city had we'd switched from the city doing the building permitting to the county doing the permitting now. Therefore, the revenues that we're bringing in aren't nearly as high as what they were in the past. So I'm going to be adjusting that figure down, and in the future, accordingly, posting that correctly. Also, the interest income, we've only budgeted 20,000, but we've already collected almost 250,000 for the year. Much higher than we expected.
Is that just because the interest rate is much higher than we thought?
Yeah, and interest rates are high, as you all know, and this was a very low projection, the 20,000. It probably could have been much higher, even at the beginning of the year, not knowing necessarily that we would get 250 by mid-year, but at least more than 20,000 that was budgeted.
I'll give you credit. We were working on budgets in October of last year. I mean, that was like in mid spike, right?
Yeah. Yep. So overall, the general fund is looking pretty healthy. We've collected in total in the general fund 61.5% of what we've budgeted for the year. So that's sitting very healthy. The special revenue funds are next, and none of these are very significant, although I would like to point out the impact fees for police, municipal building, roads, and parks and rec. Those have all, well, aside from the police and municipal building, have had nothing budgeted. And this was due to not exactly knowing how this would impact us this year. And now that I've seen a full 6 months of these revenues coming in, I have a much better handle on how they're being paid and what we can expect to receive for the rest of the year and for future. So I'm going to be adjusting those revenue figures up accordingly. And then on the very last page of the revenue, which is page 20 in your packet, just want to bring your attention to the sewer fund, Fund 402. We've budgeted 1.5 million in revenue, and we've already collected 1.3 million in revenue for the 6 months. So I expect that we will greatly surpass that before the end of the year. We've had 72 new builds year to date, and those are with all the sewer taps paid on those. So we're significantly higher than what we expected. On kind of a negative note, the pass-through income, Fund 901 at the very bottom, we've projected 300,000, although we've only brought in 91,000 this year. I don't know, I believe that 300,000 was a carryover revenue projection from the prior year. So this will have to be adjusted down unless we're expecting some major income in pass-through monies. I'm not sure when we're expecting to receive some of those payments from some of the builders who are getting ready to move ground, but that will have to be adjusted down.
Do we know when those are paid, if that's paid at zoning permit or occupancy? So I think that would give us a better idea. And we don't have to answer right now, but maybe is Alex involved in any of the receipt of that? And
I believe so, but I don't know when.
Yeah, you're talking about the pass-through income.
Yes.
Yeah.
if it's truly passed through, I mean, I'm not up in arms about it, but just from an accounting perspective, it probably would help to know what's driving it. And then,
Yeah, we'll look into that a little bit more. I think CT helps us do the estimates on that, but we need to follow up in terms of the collection schedule. All right.
So that concludes the revenue portion. If there are any questions on revenue, I'll go ahead and move on to expense. Page 21 in your packet is the beginning of the total expense year to date. And just to highlight a few items here, the police department, starting with the general fund, of course, the police department is first, and they are just under budget right now at 48.5% paid. So they're looking, very much on track. We have traffic signals, which is a little higher than what we would expect at this point of the year. However, it's not a significant dollar amount. On page 22, that top section there with the yellow highlighting the contractual services for admin, we budgeted $380,000. We've already spent $292,000 through June. This is one of the items that you'll see on the ordinance tonight for second read for the appropriation adjustment. And you can see why we need to have an adjustment there. I've listed out the major payments by vendor on the right-hand side there, so you can see what we've been paying in that line item.
Were these all then were these unbudgeted contractual services and things that have come up, or did we just?
Some were unbudgeted and some were known, and some were just higher than we expected them to be. Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, for example, the 25,000 in the Dilly excavating, that's something that I don't know that we knew was going to, well, I believe we're going to get reimbursed, but we haven't received reimbursement from that yet, or from the grant, so. Go ahead.
I was going to mention on the CT consultants, this one, we always see it in these big chunk numbers, but there's several things they do for us. And it might be helpful if in a future meeting, whether it's finance or services or somewhere, where we have a breakdown of the projects they're actually working for us. I mean, we have a retainer with them, but primarily this 128,000 is coming from, I'll throw out a couple things, them inspecting streets or them doing parks analysis on how to do J.R. Smith Park. And you know what I mean? Like it's things like that. The things that we ask them to do add up over time. And if we don't have it tied to projects, it's hard to control.
Yes, absolutely. The 128,000 in this line item would be purely for administrative costs. Parks and things like that would be listed under the parks budget, and streets under the streets budget under
Still
CT.
in the CTs. We're still paying CT, but it's broken out separately.
Yes. So there is more of a breakdown on here. It's not to the level of detail that you mentioned. But for example, if you turn to page 23, in the very center of the page, this is the street department. And we've paid from that department's budget $31,361 to CT. And you'll find at least 2 or 3 more lines for CT, not to call out CT, but they are one of our larger vendors. Yes, so we don't pay all of CT's bills from one line. It's broken up depending on what the project is. Okay. Anything else? Nothing. Let's see.
Can I ask one more point of
Yes.
clarification? I thought you mentioned parks. And CT's expenses are charged to parks, but I can't find that. In Fund
So,
303 Parks and Rec, and it doesn't appear that CT's.
right, you are absolutely right. That could be in, I don't know if that wouldn't be in a pass through.
My guess is they're probably 120 of the 128,000 parks. Racking it up.
Yeah, I just look into that.
Not here to defend himself.
Murray is. Murray's not on parks.
Murray's not-
John is.
You got to say.
John, can you explain? I'm joking. I'm just throwing shots out. I'm totally kidding.
So the good news is that we don't have many departments that are showing to be exceeding the budget. There are a few, and those are in the red highlights throughout the packet pages. But I do want to point out that I did a little analysis on the fund balances, on where we've started the year, what we've budgeted for revenue and for expense, and what I need to adjust by, including for increasing the revenue or decreasing the revenue and increasing the expense or the appropriation. So if you guys want, I have handouts here. I'll just hand them out, pass them down. I think it's helpful to look at where we are sitting by fund.
This is what I would call a Kathy report. It looks similar to a Kathy report.
So I did take all of the information that's on the from the left over about to 40 or 60% of the page to the right. All of that in the one shade of blue is straight from Civica, from our system, our software. On the right-hand side, those three columns there, these are my manual adjustments that I'm proposing to make to the budget. And you can see that we have adjustments to revenue, and I'll just go through the general fund at the very top, Fund 101. We've originally budgeted $5,127,000 in revenue. Do you all see that in column B? Okay, so we've budgeted that. I'm expecting that we're going to have an additional $901,000 in revenue in the general fund. And that's where that 901 over in the far right column under adjustment to revenue, that's where that is sitting. And that 901 is primarily due to the income tax. It's also decreasing the building permit budget and fluctuating various line items within the general fund. I also have the adjustment to expense right next to that, the $367,500. This is what you would see on the ordinance that's on second reading tonight. All of the general fund lines that are mentioned in that ordinance add up to the $367,500. And if we increase the revenues and increase the expenses by those amounts, we have an adjusted year-end balance of $6,705,000 in the general fund. Prior to these adjustments, you can see the original balance would have been $6,171,505. So does this make sense? Okay. So I've done the same for all of the funds from the general fund all the way down to the pass-through. The important thing is that we have an adjusted balance that's in positive for every fund, which we do, which is good. But it does change some of our fund balances most of them in a positive way, some of them in a negative way. For example, the Fund 901 at the very bottom. Since we're not getting that large amount of revenue coming in, I've had to adjust the revenue down. So we're going to end with a projection of $22,899 as opposed to $222,000. Sorry, I don't know how to make these numbers more exciting. But
We can't show how excited we really are.
so yeah, I just thought this was helpful. Mr. Ghost actually asked that I put something like this together by fund so that we could see where we're sitting right now. So I thought that was a great idea and wanted to share it with all of you as well.
That's good stuff. Also, your revenue and expense reports, I've really started like acclimating myself to them. I love the pro rata version, you know, where you're showing point in time where we are versus the budget. I mean, this is private sector mentality right here. You're doing a great job, I think, showing us the real live forecast, and we're constantly doing a projection of where we're going to be by the end of the year. So really nice work. I love the format.
Thank you. Finally, in the finances, I have included the complete check report for all the checks written, manual, actual physical checks and memo checks, meaning payments via ACH or via the web. All of those are listed on page 26 through the end of the packet. This was a recommendation by the Auditor of State to have Finance Committee just view every check that's being written and approve it, whether it be an actual verbal approval or just Finance Committee views it and asks questions if necessary, as long as you guys have visual access to it. That's the most important thing. So you can see where we're spending all of our money.
And this is something you're planning on producing every month? The checks? Okay. The auditor told us to make sure we look at it. We're gonna have to look at it. They're gonna say, council saw this. They knew it was out there.
It's just best practice, I believe, just as long as you guys see, you know, where all the spending is happening.
Any questions? Ms. Steffen?
That's all I have.
I did have one question for you. Just where are we on the RETA collection process from prior years? Outstanding tax?
Are you talking about the delinquency program?
Yes.
I did submit the intention to participate in the delinquency program as well as the subpoena program. I haven't heard yet when they're going to start mailing those letters. I can find out. I'll follow up and find out, but I did submit our intention on time, so they are aware that we're participating.
Great. Thank you. Do we get any type of reporting like midstream or as they're trying to do outreach on our behalf? Like we reached out to, I don't know, 100 people that no longer live in the city or something, or that do live in the city, because those are the ones I think are gonna.
Yeah, I don't know that they have a standard report that they would provide, but anytime I ask them for any type of report or any information, they're very forthcoming with it. So I can definitely get on a schedule of asking them who they're reaching out or how many individuals they've reached out to and what the response has been.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you all. Great presentation. Any questions for Mrs. Steffen?
How are you fortunate enough to become a miscellaneous vendor?
Oh,
Where are we?
Page 26.
great question.
Submit a W-9 and try to get on there?
Great question. So I didn't realize that those were listed on here. So miscellaneous vendor, this would be, they're all memos. The type M indicates it's a memo check, so it's not a physical check written. I can tell you that all of those amounts are for. Wait, no, maybe I can't tell you. Okay, yes. That is for the HSA funding that we did at July 1st. It was actually done in June 30th. So it was expensed in June. That's why it's on this sheet. So that was for the HSA funding. So when I have to enter a memo expense in the system, a vendor is required. And in this case, we were just sending money to each employee's HSA account. So there wasn't necessarily a true vendor that was being paid. It was just being paid to employees. So that is what that indicates there. And it should be about 47,000 or so. Forget the exact amount, but it's all even numbers. I'm certain that's what it is. And it's several different lines because it's broken out by department. Yeah. You're welcome. And the other one at the top there, or in the center of the page for 1,500, that was for a new employee getting his separate payment to his HSA.
Really good question, Mary. Probably the best one you've asked.
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, you see miscellaneous vendor on there, like what's going on?
It's like a direct deposit in somebody's account.
Exactly. Well, kind of was. But it's all legit. It's all legit.
I believe we're on to unfinished business. Anybody on the committee? Mr. Hennessy?
I don't have anything.
All right. I think we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Romney, motion to adjourn. Mr. Neff, second discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
5 ayes, we are adjourned.
Right.